Join us today for another BattleTech book review. This time we're going to be reviewing two books because it's one story split across two books. That would be the Grey Watch Protocol and Paid in Blood, which are parts 1 and 2 of the Highlander Covenant series, from author Michael J. Sierravella. Welcome back to those of you who've been here before. Welcome to those of you who are new to the channel. Like I said, we're gonna be doing reviews for two BattleTech books because it's just one story spread across two books. Though it does have a natural break point, I can see why they split it up. So these books are parts 1 and 2 of the Highlander Covenant. We'll get to the spoilers in a moment. These are fairly well-written books. I do have some issues with them. They're not major issues. Logically I can see, but to me parts of just not so hot on it. But I'll explain that in the spoiler part. But overall, like the competency of the writing is all there. The dialogue all makes sense. The action scenes are all great. You can generally understand what's happening. I'll get to that in the spoilers in a moment too. There's one little thing there. And like I said, the books do have a natural break point. And the minorest of spoilers, whenever I say these are in the Dark Age setting, I mean this one misses the IlClan setting by like 4 days. Like December 27th, 3150 is the final scene in this book. January 1st, 3151 is when Clan Wolf enters the Terran system to begin their attack.
So wait, does it show the future of Christmas then?
No, actually it doesn't show Christmas in either one of these.
Huh. Boo.
And it would have been celebrated in places in that one. So, yeah, that's kind of odd, now that you mention it.
Does Christmas even still exist in the BattleTech universe?
Oh, yes. Chad, if they have the Space Pope, they have Christmas.
They have 2 Space Popes, remember?
No. They have the Space Pope and they have the Terran Pope. There was a miscommunication. The Space Pope was killed by the Kyreans. They have the new Space Pope, the Battle Space Pope.
I thought you said there was the Space Pope and then the Space Battle Pope.
No.
Well, one rules the spiritual soul and the other rules the battlefield.
No. There is at this point there is only the Battle Pope in space. There's the Pope on Earth, and due to a miscommunication somewhere along the way, they're like the Catholics in House Davian launched their own papacy and they got their own line. That's the Space Pope.
Heresy.
Technically, probably. So yeah. That's the way I understand it. But anyway, I should have mentioned this in the other review. In the last review, as you folks are experiencing this in the linear movement of time.
Yes, almost like it was just done.
And not just recorded moments ago from our perspective. It's all about perspective. Relativity, I should say. It's all relative. But I should have mentioned this in the other review. Whenever House Kirita conquered New Avalon, they executed the Space Pope.
Yeah.
Because they don't allow religions other than Shinto Buddhism. So, which, I have a little side note on that, because I've read the House Kirita handbook. It actually has a little section talking about Judaism because of that. But since being Jewish is both the religion and the ethnicity, it clears up that it's not illegal to be Jewish in House Kirita. You just can't practice the faith. Just being a person of Jewish descent isn't illegal because it's also the ethnicity. So those are the little details the BattleTech books actually get into. So although they let the Umayyads, I want to say, I could be wrong on those folks, on what they're called. But there's 2 or 3 planets where they do practice Islam, and they kind of turn a blind eye to them. which is also mentioned in the House Kirita book. But the rest of the realm, Shinto Buddhism. So, anyway, not at all relevant to this. Although House Kirita does show up in this, so maybe. So, basically, the basic plot, without spoilers, is Northwind, home of the Northwind Highlanders, the mercenary faction, formerly loyal to House Lao before they betrayed them, and then joined with House Davian to attack them, I do believe, and then eventually not them, and now they're kind of tied up with the Republic. So they are in possession of one of the only functioning hyperpulse generators on Northwind. Those are the things that allow intergalactic communication. For every one of those you have, it presents a tremendous tactical advantage because you don't have to send signals via jump ships, which, even though they instantaneously jump 30 light years, if you do that, you then either have to recharge the drive, which takes, I think it's 120 some odd hours, and then jump again, or you have to transfer to a jump ship that's already waiting, which takes time, and then jump again and keep transferring. And you can do that, that's faster, especially if they're the ones equipped with the lithium drives that can jump and then jump again instantly, but they take twice as long to recharge. They call it a command circuit, and they do that to be able to move messages back and forth quickly to the front. And the Capellans are having to do that for the war. So they want the HPG because, number one, vital resource. Number two, Northwind is very close to Earth. So having something like that at the front of the war would allow for far faster communication with Cyan to allow his celestial wisdom to guide the war better. That's the Capellan Chancellor who thinks himself a god.
House Lao. Crazy.
Yeah, although in one of the other books it becomes clear that he leaves Cyan and actually comes much, much closer to Earth to basically have a front row seat so he can guide the war from there because they're going to make a move on Terra. So this is about them making their move on Northwind and the assorted obstacles they have to overcome, and this is the second half of the story. Without major spoilers, I can tell you that this book involves the Capellans, the Highlanders, the Armed Forces of the Republic, and House Kirita. Because this is also while the Capellans and the Kiritans are involved in the Unity Pact, where they are allies to attack people together. Specifically on the Capellan front, it involves Warrior House Imara, who is the first among equals for the Warrior Houses, and the Grand Master of the Warrior House accompanies them, meaning he's like the leader of all the Warrior Houses, essentially. Elements from the McCarran's Armored Cavalry's 4th Division. I don't remember how they're broken up, but the 4th unit in the McCarran's Armored Cavalry. A group from the Magistry and Magistracy of Canopus. That's quite the little motley crew they've got going on. And another unit from the Lao military. So yeah, it's a definite like this shows you how if you're wondering who should I paint my units up for, and you're like, oh, I like this house, but I'm going to paint it for this unit, and this unit, and this unit. Yeah, that happens all the time in these books. Like groups from like 8 different commands will join together for one single assault. Because the opposite happens on the other side. The Highlanders, the Republic Armed Forces, and some other folks all kind of join together. But yeah, so like I said, well written, worth a read. I do have a handful of issues, but I'm going to talk about them in the spoilers, which we're going to get to right now. So,
spoilers from here on out.
Yes, spoilers. Here they come. Okay, so House Lao actually takes the HPG in like the opening salvo pretty well intact. They capture most of the Comstar folks that are there to run it. The thing that screws them, and the name of the book, is the Highlanders have a bunch of battle mechs from like Succession War era battle mechs that are painted gray, called the Gray Watch, that are piloted by a bunch of like octa and septuagenarians who have all kinds of battlefield experience, and they kind of come out of hiding and start fighting the Capellans. So it's
Is this a be wary of the old man in a profession where they die young?
kind of, except the old men are also forced to contend with the fact that the enemy battle mechs are several generations newer and have far more advanced weapon systems. So while the old men give a good showing, several of them don't make it.
Well, yeah.
So yeah, uh, you also have reinforcements from the Republic show up because Tara Campbell is able to convince Devil and Stone to send units with her. So it's not just the forces on planet, but she brings some of her own Highlander forces plus a couple of the units from the Republic. And they show up just in time to stop the Capellans from taking the main fortress, the castle. Which, had they done that, they basically would have the game would have been over. Uh, However, importantly, the Capellans split their forces whenever they initially attacked, and you find out over here why that happened. That is because the Mariskova, I know I'm mispronouncing that, it's a Russian word, the Lao secret police, their local agent advised that the main threat was going to come from one of the other continents. So the Warrior House in Mara went to one, everyone else went to the other, and yeah, so not the case. And I'll get to that here in a moment. But yeah, so they eventually do link back up once they have the HPG, and then the other forces show up. So then they send out a signal requesting assistance because they have the HPG. So why not?
Yeah.
And they're expecting like mercenaries or maybe one of the other groups from the McCarran's Armor Cavalry or somebody's going to show up. Did not expect House Kirita to show up.
Yeah.
And they do, and then they just like stay in geosynchronous orbit over the main area. And the longer they're up there, the more the Capellans are like they're planning on screwing us, you know. And of course, which is hilarious because that is their plan. However, House Creator keeps going on and on about all this honor baloney, and then they're so pissed off whenever the Capellans appear to screw them. It's just kind of like, but that was your plan, you dishonorable bastard. Like, you can't call someone else dishonorable if they do the thing you were going to do.
Yes, you can.
Well, you can. It's called hypocrisy, which the Kiritans really love.
Yeah.
But
There's also the whole they don't know for sure they were going to screw him over. They
yeah,
have no evidence.
yeah,
So they can still claim, no, we weren't, and keep their honor
yeah,
while also being you dishonorable people down there.
yeah. Okay. So anyway, they so the impetus for this is first the Grandmaster of Warrior House Imara gets incapacitated at a battle, so his second in command has to take over. Well, then he starts listening to the Mariskova agent, who's like, "Hey, you should go attack the civilians," which is terrible advice because there's nothing to gain, and all you're going to do is piss off the civilians and the defenders. Because up to that point, House Lao had actually taken a pretty light approach to things, which is quite unusual for House Lao, let me tell you. So he's like, yeah, we've got to avenge the commander. That makes total sense. Meanwhile, the woman who's in charge of McCarran's Armored Cavalry is like, that's nonsense. Don't listen to that. But unfortunately, they're technically equals in the command chain, so she can't command him not to do it. So he's off doing this, which pisses everyone off and gets them closer to the city. And then she's talking to the Kiritan general, the warlord, Ikeda, and she's like, "Well, here's our updated intelligence, and we need someone to talk with you to go over the battle plan about how you're gonna help us and everything." And so the Mariskova agent's like, "I'll go up there and talk to them." So she's like, "Yeah, sure, great idea." Basically, get the hell out of my view and go do that. Well, his shuttle goes up there, docks, and then explodes because it was laden with explosives. And that's the point that has the warlord is like, those Capellan curs, of course, their treachery is legendary. I should have expected this. And she's like, what happened? We're sending our fighters up to double check, to assist. Well, he thinks it's part of the attack, so he orders his fighters to attack them and decides that he signals the Republic force and is basically like, I'm not coming for you, I'm coming for the Capellans. Stay out of my way. And so that's the point that she's like, find out if that guy was even on that ship. Because they start looking at the explosion data, and the thing had enough explosives that should have cracked the drop ship in half. But the docking wasn't complete, so the blast didn't go in. And she's like it was on a timer instead of manual. And they're like, yeah, that's kind of the way it's looking. And she's like, all right, find him. He's still here. He clearly has screwed us. And he did because he's a Republic double agent, as you find out in the final part of the book. So the big problem I have with this, it's plausible. However, the moment the order was given, the suggestion was given to go attack the civilians, the smart move would have been to shoot him. Because he's the only agent on planet. Shit happens in war. He's clearly giving bad advice. He'd already given the bad advice about splitting the forces. Then this. Even if he's not a traitor, he's a terrible asset. Shoot him and burn the body. Just be done with it. That was the smart play. And the person doesn't do this. And so that to me that's a problem because she comes off as a smart character otherwise. But also, the HPG is in the city of Terra, Tara. And they talk about the Highlanders, the Grey Watch folks, being able to sneak their battle mechs into the city. Now, I'm not going to claim to be an expert on fictional weaponry that doesn't exist. But to me, a 30-foot tall, up to 100-ton machine doesn't do stealth, doesn't do sneaking. You would know damn good and well if one of them is tromping down the city streets. And there's no way the city is big enough, the way it's described, that House Lao doesn't have it completely encircled with its forces. There is no possible way, based on the description in this book, that could happen. Yet it does.
May I make a suggestion?
Let's hear it.
Does it actually show how they get in?
No.
Then they take the Big O route.
No, there's nothing underground. It literally mentions them they're like, oh, we distracted this patrol. It's like, okay, but what about the one anywhere within miles of earshot that can hear your battle mechs moving, that can feel the seismic vibrations in the ground, that gives away the magnetic sensors?
The Big O route doesn't work then?
No, they keep them underground probably, but they don't have a big expansive rail system or anything. Plus, they would hear that too with the seismic sensors.
True. That train in Big O was noisy.
However, having said that, I will give them credit for coming up with the brilliant idea of disguising two urban mechs as grain silos and then attacking with them. Because literally the guy's going along is like, wait, did that grain silo just move? And then autocannon fire to the face.
Wow.
Which was really funny because House Lao is the force with the most number of urban mechs, but it's the Highlanders using them against House Lao. So, yeah. Yeah, the urban mechs are to be feared in certain settings. Not in open combat on the field, but you get them in tight quarters, they'll wreck your day. So yeah, like I said, their books are definitely worth reading. It's minor quibbles. It's one of those I hate seeing characters that clearly have thought things through and have planned carefully, and then are just undone by something that I consider to be stupid. I had this problem. For those of you who've seen the show Death Note, that's why I hate the last third of the show. And literally there's a point where you should just make up your own ending. Because the villain should have won in that show. He was very clearly the intellectual superior there and planned things out. Whereas the other guy just did things through detective magic. His bullshit. But anyway, that's a whole other review. We'll talk about that someday when I get into anime. It's still a good show, though. But if you ever watch it, you'll know the point I'm talking about. You know what point I'm talking about. You've seen it, right?
Some of it.
Okay, well, if you watch the
I've seen
show,
enough to know Light should the villain Light should clearly win
yeah,
because he is way smarter than anyone else in the show.
yeah, yeah, and like the lengths he goes through, like not it's not just the whole being smarter, but like the fact that his plans make sense, the lengths he goes to. Whereas the other guy just kind of like, I just didn't like him. He's probably the bad guy. He had reasons beyond that, but that's what a lot of it boiled down to. It's like, I didn't like the cut of his jib. It's probably him. Like, of literally like the 7 billion people on Earth, somehow it's that guy.
Yep.
Anyway, definitely check out the books if you get the chance. Let me know if you do read them and what you think. If you haven't seen the other review, this book by the same author. I do consider this book better than these books. This one to me was kind of slow going, and like what they talk about for the first like 30 or 40 pages is not paid off until the last 10 pages of this book, and it's a bunch of baloney that doesn't matter to anything. No offense, Michael, but you know, you should have jumped straight to the invasion or something, or given us conversations that mattered. So anyway, this is definitely a better book, but the guy's a good author. Definitely check out his other work.
Have they taught like were they talking about how many new flavors of Lay's there's been since the 21st
No,
century?
the main guy on the planet, our main point of view character, Declan, he is trying to track down like hidden signals that are probably going out, but he can't figure out what they are or what they're all about. And he finds out at the end of the book that this one guy, who I think is dead at this point, double crossed some other people and killed them, like way before the books ever started, like back during like whenever the Steel Wolves invaded, like I don't know, 15 years ago at this point, I think in the timeline, back during like the original Dark Age books that were published by WizKids. Yeah, like doesn't matter. No one cares. It's all to answer why didn't the Grey Watch step in then? There was a perfectly valid reason given in the books. They operate on a cell structure. The Steel Wolves invaded. They didn't have time to activate everybody. That's it. That's all you need. That's all the books needed. That was a perfectly reasonable explanation. You tried to complicate things too much. And thus the beginning of this book is too slow for me. That's why it took a while for me to get through this, to get to this, because I jumped ahead and then came back to this. So, yeah. But anyway, those are minor complaints. The books are still worth reading. Just I'm letting you know. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe you guys read them and you're like, what's Bob going on about? These books are perfectly fine. Let me know down in the comments. Speaking of which, Chad, you got any comments?
No.
Okay.
No, just yeah. No comments.
All right. Well, folks, look for a couple other reviews. Definitely check the other one out for the Damocles Sanction if you haven't seen it. And we also did book reviews for the Founding of the Clans trilogy, which will come up in two of the other books we're going to be reviewing in the very near future. So be on the lookout for reviews of Betrayal of Ideals if you want to know all about Clan Wolverine. That's right, it all fits in this book, everything you need to know. And Forever Faithful if you want to know about the Fidelis for the Republic. And whenever I review this book, I'll explain why they matter, because it's kind of a thing. I don't know if I'm going to review this book, but for the record, it's really tiny for some reason. I don't know why.
Maybe because if they made it the same size as the other books, it'd be way too thin.
Yeah, probably. I mean, even that is two stories in one. I mean, yeah, so if you want to know about Julian Davian's original run-in with the Capellan Confederation, where he loses his leg and I think an arm to deny Laos and Treya, read the first part of this, Splinter of Hope, and the Anvil has to do with Clan Jade Falcon. These were good stories, by the way. I'm just probably not going to do a review on them, except to show you right now it's a really little book. So, folks, let us know in the comments what you think. Whatever, good, bad, ugly, whatever. Like, share, subscribe. Hit up that Twitter link. It's not a link, sorry, it's the address in here somewhere. Up here, over here, I don't know, but it's probably going to be down there.
All over the place, apparently.
It could be if I edit it correctly. We'll see. That'll take a while, though. I probably won't do that. So anyway, we will see you folks later.